Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Hey guys, let's start a cult. We don't need any Kool-Aid because we have spears.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cosmere Connections. We're a bunch of book-loving nerds looking back and rereading the entire Brandon Sanderson series involving the Cosmere. My name is Reader, and I'm joined by Swiggity Swoo.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
We've got John.
What's shaking, guys?
And last but not least, Kay.
Hey, 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 how's it going?
And today, we're going to be finally finishing Mistborn, The Final Empire. We're going to cover the epilogue and then go into our favorite parts of the book. And then in the spoiler section, talk about the entire book and what it means as a whole. So, before we get into it, would anybody like to say anything about this section?
We're finally done. Woo! Also, it's got a really sweet ending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this ending is like one of the best endings of any book I've ever read. I feel like this trilogy stands well on its own, but this book as a singularity stands well on its own as well. If you just want to read this, you have a satisfying experience, I think.
Let's get into it. So we're going to start off with the epigraph for the epilogue.
Yes, indeedy. And it's a little bit longer than most, so we're not going to read the whole thing here. But it talks about the author of the journal, who we now know was not Rashik, talks about this sense of peacefulness that comes across from time to time, and how it's kind of there a little bit all the time. Usually, kind of in the quiet moments, you can sort of sense it, and there's just that odd peacefulness that, something is watching, something cares, something is invested in the outcome of these events. And the real comforting thought that it imparts is this: if I fail, another shall come to finish my work. And if that's not foreshadowing, I don't know what is.
I've always loved that part. And I've always seen it as like the last page that got ripped out, or like as the Lord Ruler. Because I always envision it like he's in his tent. This hero is like in his tent, he's finishing it, and then I'm seeing this cinematically. Like you see the outline of like a man come up with a rock in his hand and like bash his skull and knock him to the ground. This is like the last page he was working on that gets like torn away or gets covered in blood and is ultimately wiped free.
That's interesting because I always
Rashik
saw that
comes.
section as like kind of a random blip in the middle of like when all the chaos is starting to happen, like when people starting to doubt him and when he's really feeling the pressure to be the hero. He steps back for a second. He's like, you know what? There's always peace, because if I can't do this and I'm not the right person, there will be another. So it's okay.
What if it's actually the first one? What if this is the first page of the diary?
I always thought that the first page of the diary was the first one in the book, which is Sometimes I wonder if I'm the hero everyone thinks I am.
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying like in order of like it would make sense that this like the last page.
There's definitely a
But we also
reason
know
this
that
was
the
put
last
here.
page is, well, to foreshadow that even if this hero fails, there will come another.
Mm-hmm.
But since it's at the end, I always thought it would be at the end, and we had seen what was the final page with Vin reading it. Now tomorrow it will end.
No, I think it's a cool concept. Like, it was the page that fell out at the end or whatever. I think it's a cool theory.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one I hadn't never thought of before.
I mean, you could be 100% right. Like the parts we see in the epigraphs is one thing, and then what Vin has in the actual book, I don't believe is the same as what we see in the top thing. In certain areas, maybe the stuff that we see in the book is different from what we see in the epigraphs. Stuff in the book is the end. I don't know. There's no way of knowing.
Yeah, there's no
It's
way
up
for
to
us
your
to
own.
know. So
It's up to your own headcanon.
Yeah, it certainly
Until
seems
Brandon
like
says so.
Right.
it seems like certain sections are cherry picked for emphasis on like what's happening in the chapters or in this stage of the book, but also there's like a level of chronological progression to it where you're getting closer and closer to him finding the power. And I always thought that was interesting too. Like, you really have no sense for like, are we just reading this book all the way through, or is this just like certain sections that happen to go with this chapter, you know?
That's why I kind of say if you're on your first read of this book, you can skip the epigraphs because all the important stuff is in the actual book. Like Vin reading about Feruchemy, Rashek, and all that is actually in the pages she read.
I definitely skipped the epigraphs the first couple times
Like
that I
me
read it. I
now.
just skipped over them.
I definitely did too. And it was only like on my third reread that I started like, oh wait, this is kind of telling me something.
Yeah.
But it's like here's a separate kind of story that he told that adds details. And you can ultimately read the whole book. It gives you everything in the book and then come back and get like, here's some extra stuff.
I also definitely did not realize that they were important until I read through it another time.
Yeah.
Until I had read through it again, and I was talking to my dad, and he was like, "You read those things at the beginning of the chapters, right?" And I was like,
That kind
I
of
definitely.
blows my mind. I can't imagine reading the book and not reading.
I was in middle school.
Yeah, I was very young. And
That's
you've got
fair.
these
I
and you got
really
these
remember
two
middle school.
storylines now that you got to keep in your mind throughout the entire book. It's like you could easily just read the book, come back, read all this on like a second read through now that you know the entire book.
I
Like
can
at this
totally
point now
see
with
that.
like Rhythm of War and all that, like I can definitely bounce between everything because I understand. I've built that wall in my mind what they mean. But when you start out, if this is your first Brandon book, you can skip that.
Yeah, but it's different now.
Come back to it. Don't worry about it.
Now, like the epigraphs are like some of the most exciting parts of that book, right? If you do the audiobook, you can't really skip the epigraphs because it just has them in there. So I never had that chance.
That's
I
true.
never had that like moment of I never had that choice, you know?
Yeah.
Anything else for the epigraph in our final journal log?
I really like it. I really like this one, and I also kind of sympathize with it a lot. Like, I too feel stressed out in my daily life, but then you see like the beautiful horizon, and you just feel like there's something bigger out there, and there's like something grander, and I don't know. I connect with this a lot. I like this epigraph a lot. Just on a literary sense.
Hopeful.
Yeah.
It's very, very hopeful. And it's a hopeful ending to the book. Like, even if you don't succeed with what you're doing, someone else will come along and finish it.
Okay. Strangely enough, I got the first section, which is all the lore heavy, the Cosmere magic stuff. But for some reason, my notes are longer than the typical chapter. Because there's so much in this section that should be covered.
I was like, I think my notes are like a paragraph
There's a
for
lot
the
of
second part of it.
stuff.
So
yours is a wholesome moment. I've got the plot hole chapter. Brandon spends every second of it basically filling in any possible plot holes.
That's one thing I almost don't like about this epilogue is that it is just like the info dump of all time. But it's necessary.
Okay.
But
I'll get into it.
It's also like it's filling in things that if you had noticed it before, you would have understood. Like, you can see when you reread it, you can kind of see where the foreshadowing was.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's definitely something you would cut, not the whole thing, but specific sections of it in like a cinema, like in a movie. But a lot of it you would have to keep. Like, I'll get to it as I read. But let me start from the top. Then Sazed and Marsh look over the fallen empire. Elend was setting up a new government while they talk about the Lord Ruler. Sazed explains that youth is something a feruchemist can store, but is typically useless. However, since the Lord Ruler could burn metals and store its magical energy, which is known as investiture in the Cosmere, as well, that he could, and I quote, he would have gained a limited supply of youth, since he was drawing most of his power from the metal itself rather than his own body, and all the extra youth could be stored in one's bracelets. Which is a strange concept to try to think about, but basically, he would begin storing his thing, but he would also burn the metal that's associated with it, and all that energy would basically exceed that ability. Basically, he would be able to store the young part of it in another metal mind, and that by removing that with Vin, all of his age returned to him. Vin fingers her earring and thinks about secrets. She wonders if any Pharaoh Allomancer could be a new Lord Ruler. Sazed agrees. That's probably why he feared keepers so much. Vin still wonders about the logbook, the Well of Ascension, and the deepness. She asks, how did the Lord Ruler get so strong at Allomancy as well? Because him being super strong with Feruchemy in this ability does not explain his ability to push and pull on metals inside her stomach. Sazed doesn't know. He says that he will record the events and pass them on, but it is time for the keepers to teach and be spread out across the world. Marsh comments that maybe the Lord Ruler discovered Allomancy in the well, since there was no record of it beforehand. Vin asks if the spikes hurt, like they should. He says that all 11 do. 2 in the head and 8 in the chest, with 1 extra linchpin in the back. The only way to kill an Inquisitor is to disconnect the top 2 from the others, which is how Kelsier was able to kill 1, and he was able to kill the rest. Kelsier was a little bit vampire style. Marsh explains that creating an Inquisitor is a very messy and process, and that there were actually multiple bodies, and that was why there was so much blood in that room back in the soothing station. Vin asks why, and this is one of those plot holes being filled in. Vin asks why the Kandra didn't impersonate Kelsier and pretended to die for him. Sazed explained that to become someone, it eats their bones. Vin
That's
is
so metal.
disgusted, but ultimately... How long have you had that one?
Yeah.
Vin is disgusted, but decides to keep him and his contract when Sazed says they are paid in atium, which we already know is very difficult to get your hands on, and impossible now. Marsh leaves since he now represents the ministry for the new king, and Vin thinks about the Lord Ruler's last words and what they mean as she looks at Keep Venture. Sazed says he wants to see, says he Elend to see that she is safe, and after finding the atiumless treasury, he was preparing an army to save her. Sazed says he is a good man. Vin laughs, thinking how Kel would react to them putting a noble in charge once again, but she nods. A good man, ... Yes, I've known a few of those now. A very dump-filled chapter.
I'm glad you included those final lines,
Lots going
though.
on.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Point out is that Kelsier, before he died, transferred Kandra's contract over to Vin. It says that in this
Yeah.
chapter. So Vin now has the contract for the Kandra.
Yeah, that's what I meant by she keeps him.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
as a puppy.
But I love how she's like grossed out about it too. She's like, tell him he's free or whatever. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, they purchased his contract with ATM. Like, that's super expensive. Like, that's really rare and nice of a thing to have. Like, and she's like, eat.
But like, it's completely understandable. Like, it ate Kelsier.
Yeah.
He wasn't bones. This was like within the day, meaning he ate his body after he died. Probably pretty quickly because we know that New would pretend to be dead in the same area. So probably when everybody left, he got up, went over, ate his body, and then went off to do who knows what.
But
He probably moved the body.
It's what Kelsier
Yeah.
wanted, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was part of the contract. It was part of the
Deal.
deal.
yeah, he was always planning to have his corpse be eaten by a Kandra so he could be impersonated even after his death.
Mhm.
Talk about metal.
That was his main reason for hiring the Kandra.
Yep.
Was to do that, not to play Lord Renew. That was a
That was-
secondary.
The initial terms of the contract.
Yep.
And then in like a disturbing, kind of twisted way, by giving Orsur's contract to Vin, it's kind of like he's sticking with her. But you know what I mean? Because it's like his bones, like in a disturbing way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how they keep Kelsier around for the second movie.
Yeah.
He's just wearing the bones, but it's a completely different character. And now bringing in DragonKeiran. We've covered basically the epigraph so far, and we just covered the plot point heavy stuff. Where basically Vin and Sazed and Marsh talk about everything that kind of happened and they fill in a lot of the plot holes.
Okay, for the epilogue, we're just for covering the epilogue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, we are not covering the last part of it. We still got Kay to do that.
Nice.
She took it up from me.
You offered.
Because I knew you'd want it. I'm too nice of a person.
I tell you
But
what, you can have all the ball scenes in the next book.
uh-huh.
Yep. You can have all of the ball scenes
Oh
in the next
boy!
book. Though in book 3, I get them again.
No.
Tricky,
I don't like this
tricky.
plan.
Okay, does
But-
anyone have
I
anything
mean,
else to
take the
say
ball
about
scene
the-
in Era 2, Book 1.
Mm.
Oh.
Anything the four of us who know what we've commented on would like to add before finishing up?
I think we can move on.
Okay. So the last part is very sweet, very wholesome. It's just nice. So Vin is sitting atop Keep Venture, and she's looking down at Elend sitting in his study. She can look through the skylight in his down to his room because it's still broken. From when she dropped a body into it. Elend is drafting new laws for their new country that they're gonna have for the city. Elend has been nominated as king for the city, and she kind of thinks about how he's gonna do a really good job at it. And she's sitting there, and she's thinking on whether or not she's gonna go down to talk to him. She wants to go down, but she's kind of worried that he won't like her anymore. And she can't go down to see him because she doesn't deserve to be with a man like him, and that she is not the right person to be with him. That he deserves someone better than she is. So she decides to not go down, and she turns to go away, and then she thinks about Reen and how Reen she learned that Reen never betrayed her. And she hears Reen's voice in her head saying, that says, go back. So she decides, so she turns around and she jumps down into the room. And she says that she makes a little joke that it's rude for, she's like, don't you know that it's rude to read in front of ladies? And he quickly jumps up and grabs her in an embrace and hugs her, and it ends with a really sweet line where it's been realized that that was all she ever really wanted, was to be hugged.
You.
That's cute. Yeah.
It's a great,
very cute.
great ending.
The warm fuzzies.
Mhm.
We go from ash fell from the sky to. That's all she ever
Vin
wanted.
felt the.
And they lived happily ever after.
Yeah. I love how like they didn't kiss immediately. Like I felt like that would be way too cliche, and instead they
They
just like
also been way too intimate for Vin. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, they didn't kiss at all in that last scene. They just hugged.
Yep.
He just
That's
grabs her in a
nice.
hug because he's happy that she's okay and that she's doing good now that she's.
Yep.
Yeah, nice hug feels good, man.
True.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Is
That's
there?
it's a strong way to end the book. It's like it's cute. It's sweet, right? Not everything has to be Nick Fury coming out of the back room saying, "Hey, we got this Avengers project going on." Some things can just be like nice, cute moments.
You're now part of a bigger universe.
Yeah. Granted, we still love those, but
Anything we would like to say about this part or the epilogue in general before we talk about the entire book and what we thought were our favorite parts? Still spoiler free, but basically what our favorite section was.
Gotcha. Then there's a piece that I wanted to add, which I've confirmed that wasn't talked about, was some of the how Vin talked about there's like unanswered questions left over, which is, I think it's always a great way to end an epilogue, is like, hey, kind of almost like pointing out to the reader, like, not everything's wrapped up in a pretty bow, right? So like so specifically she asked about the actual Well of Ascension. She said, like, but Vin said, frowning, the Lord Ruler's powers came from a mixture of Feruchemy and Allomancy. What happened at the Well of Ascension? What was the power that the man who wrote the logbook, whoever he was supposed to find? And then she's like, it's like, your explanation doesn't cover everything. Like, and then she later talks about, like, what was the deepness? What was it like? Why were all these people, like the original, who was supposed to be the Lord Ruler, but right, like they learned about that time. Why did he talk about it? What was that supposed to be? And so it's just like leaving like a lot of like questions for you to sit there and think about as you finish up the book. Like, what did happen? Like, what is going on in this?
Which hopefully will be answered in the book, The Well of Ascension, but who knows?
Who knows? But things that happened at the Well of Ascension answered in the book, The Well of Ascension. Goodness.
Stay tuned for season 2.
But
Slight spoiler. Slight spoiler. That is the title of the next book.
I think it's no longer a spoiler if it's something someone looks up when they're looking up the books, and it's like, books to read in order, Mistborn, The Well of Ascension. You go,
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah. Anyway,
I love that not everything was brought forward. There are still secrets needing to be. There's always another secret.
always is another secret,
Very good. Very true.
right?
And
then
we still have the question of why did the Lord Ruler feel the need to kill? Why did Reshek feel the need to kill the writer of the logbook? We still have that kind of question.
Well, I always got that
Like,
just out of like hate. Like he
I
hated
think
the
it's
people.
And he wanted a
just out of
Terraceman
hate.
to fulfill the prophecy too. I feel like.
Yeah.
We're not actually sure. Don't know what happened there.
We do have a lot
Right.
of unanswered questions and a lot of threads. Like, we know that the way the Inquisitors are made is messy, but we don't know what exactly it is. We still don't know how getting spiked gives you anything. We don't know what's up with the coal
Right.
loss. Like, there's so much
Right.
Yep.
left to explore.
And the fact
We've
that
heard the
Inquisitors
word.
have 11 spikes, not just 2
Yep.
or 3,
There are 8 in the chest.
8 in the chest.
Boy, must be
One in
really
the back,
difficult finding a
one in
bed.
the eyes.
Yeah, what are they doing with all those spikes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They just didn't have enough nails in their bed of nails.
But
I also wanted to add in the part about that Vin thinks about is the Lord Ruler's final words. I think that could be like a great like final note to end on before we move into general observations.
Mhm.
Are there any other? Sorry, you're about to say something.
I was going to say, is there anything we would like to say about the epilogue before talking about the book in general?
Okay, cool.
You've
So I
doomed
just have this one piece that
yourselves.
I just want to end on, and then we'll move into that, which is Vin's whole thoughts about the Lord Ruler's last words. So, quoting, he said, "She was more concerned about something. You don't know what I do for mankind. I was your god, even if you couldn't see it. By killing me, you have doomed yourselves." So then she thinks about what does that mean, and then she again thinks about he said, "Do, not
Mhm.
did." There had been fear in his eyes when he had spoken. Pride.
And it implies the do implies that he's currently that he was.
It says that implies that he was still
Do
doing
it.
it.
Yep.
Whatever it was.
Yep.
Anyway.
Secrets that will need to be unveiled in later books.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, why don't we say, okay, let's give our overall thoughts, and then we can all say what our favorite parts, chapter, story arc, whatever it is. And we'll start with Swiggity and make our way around.
Cool. I think my overall thought, like, on this book, is that it is not only beautiful in its own, like, this is a wonderful book to just read and think about and go on with the rest of your life, but it's also like a perfect introduction to this huge, large world of like Cosmere and even like Mistborn in general. And like, my favorite thing that this book does is introduce you to this world while at the same time just engaging you with the actual characters and the actual plot. Like, I think it's just the perfect first book in this big, you know, universe that we're going to go explore in this podcast.
Dragon, you're next.
Yeah. So thoughts on the book in general. When I first read it, and this was kind of the thoughts like when I first read it, my first, second, third, fourth, fifth time when I was in high school. Because I just read it over and over again because it was just like I just loved the feel because it was so different than so many of the other books that I was reading because it just has that like the beautiful imagery, and I always get my mind I always get so deep when I hear the age of the book because it's like emotions. It's like the imagery, the picture of
Ash falling from the
trusting,
sky.
lore trusting, right? This so you hear like this grand name, this person with ash falling from the sky, and just like this disapproving person, and just like
Just like
these
the
beating
tonality.
down people, and it's just like this great image and this tone, and it sets this dark and yet beautiful like emotions like already from like basic from page 1, and so it's just like opening that book brings back those emotions from the first time I read it every single time, and that's like it's like sends shivers down my spine when I hear those like first words every single time because that's brought back to me. And so I liked it that it was just like something that I always repeated over and over again to my friends, which is maybe a silly thing to say, but at the time it meant a lot to me. Is like interestingly as a high schooler was just like I liked that it wasn't just all,
Mm-hmm.
peaches and rainbows and everything like that. It's dark. It's real. It's visceral. There's good. There's bad. There's love. There's happiness. There's people getting me from hacking people apart. There's like this very like real like. It's not shadowed and it's not like sheltered from people. Like this is the world. There's good. There's bad. But like here's the difference that hope, that kindness can make a change inside of the world. And I just really loved like the emotions and that really came from that. So like, and that kind of always sticks with me whenever I read and think about when I read this book, because that just always
Like
comes back.
one of the like in the first chapter we meet Vin. Dang it, I can never remember this guy. Canon.
Mhm.
Like one of the first things he says is, "I should have given you to the whorehouses." Like this is our main character. Yeesh.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I always love that too. I always
John, the floor is yours.
just got like the tone of this book was so dark and so mature, like especially like the beginning with the ash and everything. Like I just totally like
Mhm.
click with me instantly as well.
So for me, reading this book for the first time, I was struck hard by the setting. You know, in every fantasy book you read, there's the Earth analog things. You got chickens and horses and livestock and sheep and, you know, bows and arrows and things like that. And you do have that here, but it's totally removed from Earth. Brown plants, ash falling from the sky, all of that stuff. It was totally alien, and that was the first thing that like really grabbed me when I read it the first time. You know, the other thing that I really helped me get into it during my first read through was that nice balance between the politics and the character interaction and like the intense combat and the wild, you know, just gore and, well, there's not tons of gore, but like the violence and the action scenes really made a great balance for me, and so that helped kind of keep me locked onto this. Going back and reading it again, you know, I definitely still get that, but this time, I don't know. I kind of feel like this book, this particularly Mistborn Era 1, but this book in general, yep, it's a great intro, but it's just that it's an intro. Like this is a taste of what is to come. It is not realized its full potential yet. Like this, there's so much more coming, and that you can build on this. So it, instead of it leaving me awestruck, it leaves me ready for the next more. You know.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Do we come around to you?
Yeah. So, for me, I don't know what it is about this book. I guess it's that it was so different from everything else that I had read, that like when I first read in 7th grade, um, like it made me want to, like, it quickly became, like, the series quickly became my favorite book series, and I reread it like 2 or 3 times within the next 2 years before Way of Kings came out. And even then, like, all throughout high school, I read it every year. So, like, it's 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 a comfort book for me. A lot of it is, but I really like all of the foreshadowing that Sanderson does in this book. I think it's very well done, and there aren't a lot of other authors that I have found that do as good a job at foreshadowing as Sanderson does, which is something that I really like about these books a lot.
It makes the second and third and fourth and 19th read throughs really satisfying.
Yeah,
You just
I
pick
don't
out
even
more
know
and
how
more.
many times I've read these books by now. It's upwards of 10. Probably like 15. I don't know.
One thing
I
I wanted
definitely
to
feel that.
say I didn't really say is I like the characterization in this book, which is another reason to go back and reread it. It's like there's so many just fun moments between characters and funny things that they say to each other. Sanderson does that in all his books, and I love it.
Banter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The banter always like gets me just like giggling and chuckling and stuff.
Yeah. I specifically like remember like in middle school like laughing at these book like the books so much that I still have this page marked in this book is the page where like Kelsier, like it's like one of the pages that I have marked in this book is the page where Kelsier like, good, let's go jump over that wall. And it's like, you're
Yeah.
insane. And he's like, you don't know. Have you been listening? Have you been paying attention?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am insane.
No, took you long enough.
How many
Yeah.
times do we have to teach you this lesson?
And I just thought it was so funny. I remember reading that quote to my friends because I was like, this is so funny. And they were like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you reading us this? Like, this isn't that funny. And I'm like, it's really
You
funny.
gotta get the setup.
Here, let's just turn back a couple chapters to chapter 1.
Yeah. Even better. Let's start with the prologue.
Let's start with the prologue. Let's start here. Let's just sit down and
So
I'll
there's
read
this
to you.
ash, right? And it's falling from the sky,
Get the context
right?
in a few hours.
I will say when I first read the Mistborn book, I could not get my head around it. It was so big to me, and there were just so many things I could not, in my mind, visually see it. Like in this entire podcast, I've talked about how I see it now, but it took me the longest time to get to this point where I was on, I think, a Boy Scout week-long camp out, and I had brought this book, and it was like the only book I had. So I literally reread this book multiple times within the span of a week. And it was
Wow.
then like I realized this is really good. This is amazing. And it really, for whatever reason, we keep talking about how much better it is on a reread, but it really shines on a reread. Either through this is your first time reading it, you just go back to it immediately. You immediately like the characters, you understand, you get to see like how they change. Like you see very briefly Yolen, Eden,
Eden.
Eden. Sorry. You see
Yeah.
Eden and how coarse he was of a person, and then by the end of the book, he's dead, but he had changed into somebody who was optimistic. It also works best on a reread. After all, like I did not like Breeze when I first read this book. It takes a little bit to get used to these characters sometimes, but I absolutely love Breeze now. But this book is definitely
It's
it
true.
works really well as a
It's
standalone.
like a stuck-up pompous prick, but you know.
It works really well as a standalone, but on a reread, that's where it shines the most.
For sure. One thing I did forget to mention as well is just I am enamored by magic systems that run well,
Mhm.
and that was like one of my big things. Is it's not just like waving a stick or like wiggling your fingers and things happen and you don't know why. It's like no, there's like logic, and like the more logical it gets, then the more creative you can become as you learn about these things, right? Like so much that like you're like, oh yes, push and pull, you jump and you shoot coins. Yeah, that's cool. And then all of a sudden you have like at the end you have Kelsier who is like bouncing
Flailing.
around, and it's just like
Yeah.
and you're like, how does it work? But like your brain like puts together. You're like, okay, you push here and he pulls here and then he moves over here, and it's just like you can now all of a sudden start imagining like the limitless potential of what this is. You know as you're driving in your car, the passenger seat, at least with what I always did in your mind's eye, you think of yourself like as a steel, like, what if I had steel? And you're like bounding through the modern day cities, and you're like, that's so cool. And it's just like it brings such life to it.
Mm-hmm.
But
There's
I
a science
loved
to the
the
magic.
magic system. Yeah, there's science to the magic, and that just like that was like probably the second thing that I got sucked into was in that first app. First learning about it, I'm like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Okay, Swiggity, what was your favorite part of this book?
My favorite part of this book. Oh my god.
It could be a full part. It could be like one chapter. It could be a character. It could be a detail. What was your favorite thing from this book?
How in the world do you pick just one? It's impossible. I don't know. I think I just like.
Close your eyes, throw a dart.
I think my favorite thing in this book is just Kelsier. I just love Kelsier as a character, as a concept, as like a plot device. Like the idea of the magnetism of Kelsier, and folks, after this book, he's gone, right? So it's like, I really enjoy the power and like the magnetism of that character, and like also every scene where he's fighting people is like one of the most badass things I've ever read. And so yeah, that's definitely my favorite part of the Final Empire, and it's like something that like the later Mistborn books are all awesome and I love them, but they just don't have that. Or do they? No, I'm just kidding.
Don't have Kelsier.
But yeah, that's it for me.
Dragon, what was your favorite thing?
Jeez. Something that I always find myself like, right? I think there's like different parts and different aspects when I'm in different moods, but the thing that I always enjoy is the banter between like Kelsier and Ham banter with each other and with the rest of the crew. It's like no matter what, it's always guaranteed to make me smile. Like, I look like different parts on different rereads, but that's like the part that I always enjoy and that I always like love. Like, know that it's like, this is coming up. It's just like that banter and just enjoyment of just like absolutely mocking Breeze. And if I'd say probably the epitome of all of that is in the moment when they all pretend to speak slang,
Yes.
like Spook.
Oh,
That's like the epitome
street
of like
slang.
throughout the whole book. It happens all, and then Wuzzing does. That's like the punchline, the epitome of the whole book. All banter is focused on that one scene, and it's just like right. It's like I'm talking about it. Everyone's just laughing because like it, and that's like the joy of it. So
I love that scene. I love all the jokes in this book.
I love it.
everyone. You had like what 5 people like speaking in street slang or just pretending to.
Another funny scene.
Moment.
Like my favorite funny scene in this book is definitely like when it's like, I'm just gonna read it. It says, "Well," Doxson asked, "what do you think?" Kelsier glanced at the cakes. "They're quite good," he said, taking another one. "The Ministry has always had excellent taste. It makes sense that they would provide superior snacks." Doxson rolled his eyes. "About the girl, Kel."
So true.
I love that part.
I love that.
I will
That's
say,
like also pretty start on this like a big start on his witty banter. Just know like Kelsier guy, he'd be so good.
I will say the only problem I have with the whole Wuzzing is as Wuzzing does scene is that Vin does not get to say anything. Like I want Vin, who has been living on the streets since she's a child, to be able to know this at least a little bit.
But it's Eastern. It's
it's
Eastern
from a
street
whole different
slang.
city.
Yeah, but I know,
It's from
I know,
the
but
Eastern dominance.
how annoying would it be to Breeze that even Vin knows it?
Yep.
Right, it's true.
John, what was your favorite?
Boy, I don't. My favorite part of the book, I think, is probably either Execution Square or Kelsier killing the Inquisitor, because
Yeah.
Execution Square is where it really gets heavy, and it really just digs in and says, "This is a bad place to be." You like, it's
Yeah.
real at that moment. It's like, oh crap, like everything kind of comes to a head, and you're like, we done messed up.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that part. And then there's like the dare I say it, vindication that you get from the when Kelsier finally overpowers the Inquisitor, and just the Inquisitor can't keep up.
Mm-hmm.
This mystical thing created by God himself, and it's taken down by a mere mortal. Like that's some Tenacious D stuff right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes,
That is awesome. That's like one of the best parts of any book. It's just so cool to see them go at it using all of their strength, holding nothing back, and like the whole city's there watching, and like, oh my god, it's so well done.
I love that scene so much, but I also love what it represents. This is the end game. This is where, like, yeah, it's the 2 chapters before part 5, but like from here on out, everything's on the table. Anybody can die. There's no holds barred. Here we go.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I almost put the book away when Kelsier died. When I read it the first time, I was like, I can't tell if the book is about him or Vin, and now he's dead. And yeah,
That is one of that is a great detail about the book, is that you don't know who's the main character, Vin or Kelsier, and that they both can be.
right.
And usually the mentor dies, but we spent half of the book in a Kelsier point of view.
Yeah, true.
Okay. What was your favorite part?
What is my favorite part?
Care to take bets on what character it involves?
I love Elend and Vin's romance. I really do. I think it's very well written. And it's really sweet, and it's a nice point in the book because it's something that has absolutely nothing to do with the job. Like, it's something that happened on accident. That it's like, this was not planned for at all. Like, and so it's just it's nice, and it's nice to see, like, at the end, Elend going to go rescue her, even though, like, he learns that she betrayed him. She wasn't telling him the truth the entire time. Like, he doesn't care because he still really likes her a lot. And so he goes and rescues her anyway.
Yeah. Elend is my favorite character as well.
Oh, that's great.
So
That's
let's
a good
for
point.
me, my favorite. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to jump straight to me. But I will say, Vin and Elend's relationship is one of my favorite things in this book. Partially because I see so much of like Elend in me, or me and Elend, but also like it is something that occurs naturally. It doesn't really feel forced.
Mhm.
Oh, it's just so good.
Well, I mean, kind of like Swiggity, his favorite part is Kelsey, or your favorite part's Alan.
For me, my favorite part is the specific scene of Vin just snapping at the crew. I don't
Yeah.
know why,
You're
but
not
I love the
Scott.
scene where Vin just comes back from killing Sean Ariel, covered in blood and the tattered remains of her dress, starting the house war. And they're just like, what the heck are you doing for this boy? He's just a noble. And she's like, so are you. You are not Scott. You do not know what I've had to suffer. You have not had the life I have had. And it's just one of my favorite things. And it's only on a reread do you notice specifically things that indicate these are not Scott in the normal sense. Like, we see it with Vin over time too. Like, she takes baths with scents in them. She sleeps in the bed. Like, I love that scene so much. Just Vin absolutely tearing them apart.
That's a good call out. I knew that was like one of your favorites in this whole book. You've been talking about that scene since the beginning.
I love it. Any final thoughts? And this will just be random shout them out. Won't do it in order. Any final thoughts on this book that we have not already covered before moving on to the spoiler section?
Oh, we weren't just supposed to be randomly shouting out our thoughts along the way. Oops.
Well, yes and no.
I know. I'm joking. I'm joking, reader.
I got the magical mute button right here.
Oh no!
Well, what have we talked about? We've talked about characters. We've talked about setting. We've talked about foreshadowing. We've talked about
characters, setting, magic
system,
foreshadowing,
rereadability.
I think we've gotten pretty much everything.
We
Okay.
talked about the love.
Then
I wanted to say one thing. Because mine was kind of a cop-out. I just said my favorite thing was Kelsier. But if I had to pick a scene, it's probably that scene where him and Sazed are talking and he asks to hear about that religion, about people that held out longer than anybody else. Like, just him talking to Sazed, like, once you know what's about to happen and what's on his mind, and like, I don't know, it's just really sweet and also kind of cool. But
it's really good. I love that's part of the rereadabilities that you notice. Kelsier kept asking about religions and what made them powerful or memorable or long-lasting.
yeah, and you know, in that moment, he was like looking to Sazed, like, for his reassurance. You know, he's like, I'm about to do this thing, and I don't know if it's gonna work out. And I like that he was there for him.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Hey guys, let's start a cult. We don't need any Kool-Aid because we have spears. Sorry, that just popped into my head and made me chuckle.
Well, on that wonderful note, thank you so much for listening and watching this podcast so far. We are happily going to continue with Mistborn Book 2, The Well of Ascension, but it probably, depending upon our schedules, can either be as late as next year. We are currently recording this mid-November, and I'm sure we've all got family plans or Christmas we want to spend with. But thank you so much from everybody here for listening to our first season, I guess would be the correct terminology. We have enjoyed this a lot, discussing amongst ourselves and also with you, hopefully you guys, for being able to watch us. There's very little we can talk about that's spoiler-free now. So what we're going to do is, for one last time in this book, we're going to hop over to the spoiler section. If this was your first read-through, we do not recommend you join us because we will talk about things down the line. If you have read the Cosmere or specifically the Mistborn series, then you are free to help it. You have been warned. In case this is goodbye, this has been Reader. I've been joined by Swiggity.
Hey, I just want to say this podcast means a lot to me, and you guys are awesome, and I'm so glad that we get to do this together.
We've got DragonKeiran.
I appreciate being able to jump on, and I hope you enjoyed the first Mistborn book like I did.
There's John.
Thanks for coming along. Don't step on any sharp metal objects. I don't know. I got nothing.
We've got Kay as well.
Yeah, it's been a great time so far, and I get to explore the Cosmere more with everyone.
And I'm sure that Juan feels the same. She was able to meet with us tonight. But I have been ReaderWarrior, and thank you so much for watching and listening. Have a nice night. And we're back!
Spoilers!
Spoilers! Kay, why did you bring
Spoiler
up that the
time.
Lord Ruler may have reasons for killing Elendi? Come on!
We
You have a
don't
long memory.
know. We don't know.
Out
I
of
would like
all
to
the
point
things
out.
Vin asked, you had to pick the one thing that wasn't even really looked at.
Yeah.
I
Get
mean,
'em
you can
thinking.
still sit there and ponder it, though.
You can still ponder it.
True.
Like,
Yeah, I know. Okay,
why we don't know why he killed the Lord Ruler. Like, we can guess.
Yeah.
We can guess that he did because he wanted the power at the Well of Ascension, but we don't know.
Mhm.
So
Let's
Yeah.
start with the epilogue again. And go through that and we'll do like book spoilers.
Yeah.
Or
So who do we
Well,
think it's referring to?
I
Like,
guess there's gonna be.
if I fall, another shall come. Is that we're thinking that's Sazed?
I thought you were originally supposed to think it's Vin.
yeah.
The trick.
At this point, yeah, you're supposed to think it is, but
Yeah, but we're in
You know.
spoiler like worlds. Like we know
Yeah.
everything.
Honestly, I
We're
right,
spoiler.
yeah,
I think that the like calming voice talking to him is Ruin.
He doesn't have a spike though.
Wait, who are we talking about? How did I miss?
Elendi.
Alendi.
Lindy.
In the epigraph.
We
part.
don't know that.
Well, I doubt. Let's see. He was already weak enough in that state. There were no creatures he could hemalurgically control. So I really doubt. And since Allomancy was so weak and
He doesn't need hemalurgic creatures to control.
No, he can
He could
also
also-
whisper into the ears of the crazy.
yeah, but I don't think
okay.
Elendi was crazy. I think it might have been preservation, maybe. Like he could have felt as he was nearing the preservation's power and the calming of it. But I do not. I don't think it would be Ruin. Because Ruin at that point would not be telling Elendi, "Yes, all will be fine." Like he's like, "Shoot, this guy is dangerous."
Well, in a way, yeah, he would be because he wants Alendi to be calm and to trust he's doing the right
By releasing the power.
by releasing
right.
the power.
That's
True.
exactly something that Ruin can and has done before, right? Like that's what he
Yeah.
does to Vin. All Well of Ascension is like
Yeah.
this is good, this is right. Hey, there's peace in having destroyed the world and come to where he is,
Mhm.
right? I mean, essentially, like I can see the argument for either side. I'm not saying one or the other. I can see the argument for right. It's peace. It's calm. Like ultimately, there's something, and it could be preservation, kind of like soothing him, being like, it's gonna be all right, But also, it could just be Ruin being like, let's not think about the fact that you're about to release him.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else for the epigraph? Anything regarding Elendi and the first hero?
Nothing
No.
spoiler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently. There isn't much you can really spoil about him unless we start talking about Kwan. Moving on to the plot filler section. We've got Atium being the feruchemical for youth, and we've got compounding, our very first showcase of that.
I believe actually age is mentioned previously by Sazed, but only very, very
Yes.
briefly.
Yeah.
He
No.
mentions age. He doesn't mention what metal stores age, but he does mention that you can store it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mentions in passing, which is a great, like, you wouldn't think normally that would be something that you'd think about, but that's one of Sanderson's like lovely like foreshadowing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
He even mentions how like it's
really
it's
weird
not
that-
that useful, except unless you're trying to disguise yourself because you can make yourself look a little bit younger. But like, so you wouldn't be thinking like, oh, I could live forever with this power.
Yeah. Not unless you can compound.
Right,
unless
which
you
was
come
something
back.
that at the time nobody knew about.
Yeah.
One
Or even
thought
thought was possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey. Uh, let's see.
But obviously, and I kind of I semi like wondered about this, and if I was here, I probably would have alluded to it if I was a little earlier. But it's just like, I mean, it alludes to the fact that like it doesn't talk about like, oh, this is what would happen if you compounded every other metal that's in existence, right? But it's like he says, he explains the mechanic, and again, this is where what I love the magic is explaining the mechanics. If you can store your own ferrochemical abilities and then burn it, you can now compound and bring that out any power out tenfold. So immediately, you now know a new rule inside of the mechanics, and you now can immediately just plug and play, right? Oh, cool. Well, if you get it with adium, you can do it with every other ferrochemical aspect, right?
Yep.
Or your immediate thought is also you can do it in reverse, which you can do. It's just a whole lot harder. And it's not quite the same mechanic, but you think like, oh man, if you can do this to ferrochemy, like, and then Vin's like, well, it's like he could, and he says like, it doesn't make sense. He could slam the metal in my body. It's like, well, because he was also compounding in reverse steel and iron.
Well, do we think that was compounding, or do we think that's just how powerful Allomancy used to be?
No,
I think
because
it's
Elend gets that
compounding, 'cause
power
Elend-
inside of
Yeah.
True.
Hero of Ages, and he's not able to throw people around with the metal inside
True.
him. So you have to look at he has the same strength the Lord Ruler does without compounding. But the problem is, well,
True.
the problem for everyone else except for the Lord Ruler is he can compound and create not just 10 times, but like tens upon tens times, hundreds of times the strength and power, and thus,
Why was there, do you think, Laracian beads at the well?
That's one that I have wondered about lots, and I can't understand it because there had to be two, right? One for Hoy and one
Well,
for Elend.
I believe they're originally 10 or 16 beats.
Do we want
I
to say
read
16
somewhere.
just because it's Cosmere?
There's
I don't think-
so I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere that it was 10, but I'm since I'm not positive on the number, my other guess would be 16 simply because of the pattern of that.
Right.
My brain tells me I think there was 10.
10. I remember something about 10 too.
Yeah,
But like,
I'm glad I'm not if it's not just me, like I'm pretty sure they remember there's being 10 and he gave out 8 and he's gonna and talks about though later. It's like, hey, why did he have those? I don't know. It's probably keeping them to like bestow upon someone else who happened to feel like needing it.
but
Right,
where
and
did
then
they originally? Why were they originally there, and why were there only so few? Like we've seen, Atium has become this whole cavernous thing. It's strange that there were like Laracian beads just in this cave, just chilling, and so few of them. Laracium's really confusing if you think
Well, the
about it.
Adium geodes were set up to
Yes, it is.
be the trap by Rashek. Like when he took the power, he screwed with the world. He set up those geodes to part of a way to help keep Ruin in prison,
True.
so that he couldn't get to his body.
So like, why were there even
And-
Laracian beads in general? I don't.
It looks like there's not an answer. People aren't sure about it, about whether or not
I thought I remember something about 10 too. That seems familiar to me. But I would at 16. Yeah, that seems highly likely.
So apparently there were 9 original Allomancers, and there's a question about whether or not Rashek was included in the 9 or not.
You think he got his powers not from a bead, but from touching the well and using it?
No, because
No.
That's how you could get 9.
No, because
no.
Vin would become a true Mistborn then after she did it.
right.
One would
I think though that it's more likely that when he touched the power and used it, he gave himself that level of power.
Oh, you
Like,
think?
either that or he ate one of the beads.
Do you
think
think
he
while
ate
he
one of the
was?
beads.
You think while he was ascended, like he harnessed part of the power and condensed it into physical thing, and created that because he realized this is what this power can do.
I was thinking that.
I mean, I think he definitely made the beads and manifested that part of it. You know,
I
but
like
as to whether
that.
he just gave himself innately via the allomancy, or if he made himself a bead and then ate the bead, you know, I think that's kind of a horse apiece.
I think he
You know,
would have
it's just
eaten.
mechanical.
I think he would have swallowed the bead. I think we saw greatly how difficult he was having of a time with just like taking out the deepness, shoving the planet so far back and forth that it caused irreparable damage. Like he would not have been able to mess with a person's spirit web and that intrinsically. Like, but I think he found, hey, if I create this metal that gives those abilities just by swallowing it, I think he would have done that. That's actually okay. That's headcanon now.
You think
Actually,
he
that does make more
created
sense.
it? I don't think he would have had enough. I mean, maybe, right? And because that's the thing, yeah. It's like, how did he get there? I don't know. My mind wouldn't be that there's enough, because he would, because Lithium is just power, is concentrated liquid, or concentrated solid, well of ascension liquid, right? Like it's just like mist is the power in gaseous form, liquid, and then
Maybe
solid
he took the
becomes metal.
Ooh. Well, the deepness was a preservation, right? Technically, the mist was the deepness.
The mist were of preservation, and he had it so it would select 16% of people to try to snap.
Oh,
I'm talking about
but it also says that
pre the original world. OG schedule.
It was there too.
But like, what if when he got rid of that, like, yes, he moved the planet all about, but he also condensed all the mist as well, and that's what created the beads.
no, the beads were already created. So Laras is the one who created the beads.
Okay.
Preservation is the one who created the beads.
Yeah.
But Brandon has said that Rashik got his powers from the well and not from the beads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, just ignore everything.
Okay, there we go.
Jeff said.
Yeah, Coppermind. Laresium was created by Laris. Rashik collected the beads after taking the power of the Well of Ascension and used them to entice foreign kings.
Wait, so who's Laras?
Laris
preservation.
is the mind
original
behind
vessel.
preservation. He's the vessel.
Like
Laris
as
is his
in
name.
AT is Ruin and Laras
Like
is
Laris,
preservation.
AT, Canavast, Swiggity. It's like that's your name, right?
I don't get the concept of
Which
names.
is why Harmonium should be Sazium.
But he specifically makes the name Harmonium because he doesn't want it to be Sazium. He wants
Too
it to be
humble for his
Harmonium.
own good.
He doesn't want his name to be the one that's out there. It should be, but
Yeah.
he specifically has it be Harmonium.
Oh, shut up if you've read Lost Metal. Shut up, shut up, shut up.
How did you know what I was thinking? Because I was over here like, man.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
Shut up.
Man.
We're not spoiling Lost Metal yet.
Yeah,
No,
we're not-
shut up.
Most of us haven't
I
even read it
I
yet,
have
so.
finished
not.
The Lost Metal.
Oh, you finished it?
Shut up.
I'm
Yeah.
all the
Oh,
way
you
through.
finished it.
I have finished it, yeah.
Nice.
So I'm
Shut up,
keeping
fat
things
dip.
inside of me. I'm keeping
Yeah. When
secrets.
When next we meet,
There's
I will
always
have
another.
it finished.
I'm going to probably start, depending upon what I'm doing tomorrow, either tomorrow or Saturday, but I will post in general, like start and or pause and you guys can see how quickly I get through this book.
I'd say
Any
take
other
your time.
spoilers we
'cause
have?
It's the last
going
we're gonna
around?
get for Era 2.
Right. That's
True.
that's kind of my thing. I could have swallowed up and eaten it and digested it already, but have purposefully slowed down myself on digesting.
You wouldn't want to get
all of the Lost
literary
Metal.
indigestion.
Right. Exactly. I also know I'm too afraid. I also know I'm going to listen to it, and then I'm going to probably go back and I'm going to listen to
Oh.
Cure of Ages, and then
interesting.
Era 2, books 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm going to listen to it again. So I know I'm going to go through it at least probably 3 times before I move on to another book series.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go through it again too.
Kay, what did you
Sorry.
find out on the cover minds?
I found out, so on the Copmind it says, so turning people, so this has to do with Lerasium, is that turning people into Mistborn is only a side effect of burning Lerasium. If someone who knew how to use it correctly were to burn it, it would have a different yet unknown effect. Someone knowledgeable enough could use the rewrite of their spiritual DNA, which is what it does. It rewrites your spiritual DNA to connect you to preservation, to achieve a different result than becoming Mistborn. Apparently,
I'm not even. Let's not even.
I don't even want to
the
think about what that might
does
mean.
affect the strength of the Mistborn created.
I
as
did know
well.
that.
Also, you can alloy Lerasium.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So
And gets the specific
if
types
you
of
want to,
metals.
if you just basically want to make mistings, you can take a bit of it, and you just
I thought I
dig
also
little
read
snakes.
somewhere like Lerasium Savant basically just ascends to preservation.
Yes. If someone were able to burn the amount of Lerasium needed to become an Allomantic savant with the metal, they would ascend and become the holder of preservation.
Whoa. Huh.
I mean,
I
again,
think that's
you'd have to
specifically because
consume so
preservation's
much
got.
that. Well, I mean, that's what Vin did, right? She consumed so much of it that she just became preservation. Like,
Yes and no.
you'd basically need all the world mists turned
To
into
me, like that.
Lerasium,
Yeah.
and then more, probably even more on top of that potentially. But
Yeah. To me, that speaks to how condensed, like, a one bead of Lerasium is of preservation's power, right? Like, if you would need that much of it to become a
Mhm.
savant. Like, that's how much one little bead contains.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Also, if Harmony wanted to, he could produce more Lerasium.
Mhm.
What?
Let's see. We've got
He
a
has
brief
the ability to produce more Lerasium if he wanted
and
to.
ATM since
An
he is.
ATM.
Yep.
I don't know about that.
Well, he's
Yeah.
got both the shards.
got
It's
both.
just
If you can create
supposedly
one, you
also
can create the other.
harmonium.
But a big thing with him is,
Harmonium
like,
can be split into it as well.
I'm just not gonna.
Harmonium
Yeah.
can be split into Lerasium and ATM as well.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Supposedly.
Let's see. We
I-
got a brief glimpse into Inquisitors and the linchpin.
Yeah, we need to move on from this conversation.
Yeah. Back to the epilogue. Spoilers.
What's the
Uh,
linchpin? What does that mean? What do you mean? Inquisitors and
The linchpin is the spike in the back
Okay,
that
yeah.
connects, that basically keeps everything together.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's
Yeah.
really weird that they.
I
Sorry.
was to say, Kelsier separated the spikes by chopping the head off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
But I
that's
believe it talks about later, the linchpin is actually crucial, not just as a way for like an easy way to kill the Inquisitors, but when like the more and more spikes you get, the more humanity you lose. But the linchpin is actually a way, if I remember correctly from some of the words of Brandon I've read, is a way to keep the Inquisitors actually more human looking and more sane. The more spikes you get, the less, like the more altered your spirit web is, the more less naturally human it is. And so the linchpin is actually a way to actually also keep their spirit web more to a human form.
I thought I remember that as well.
Oh, that's cool. I never knew that.
So it's not just like, oh, Lord Ruler built in a weakness like they find out in book 2, but it's there for spiritual things as well. Also talking about hemalurgy, the thing that I found interesting is the only hemalurgic creations that the Lord Ruler ever made was when he was being influenced by Ruin, and it talks about he had his Inquisitors for 1,000 years torturing and trying to create new hemalurgic spikes.
And they were unable to.
He has a dozen Inquisitors for over 1,000 years, just stabbing people in different ways to see what happens.
Yep.
And he gets nowhere.
That's what really terrifies me about Palm's wolf people in book 2 of Era 2.
Oh, the
Yeah, Shadows of Self.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how
Oh,
the heck?
what do they call them? The Chimera?
Chimera, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever those things are.
Yeah.
The twisted, deformed things with a
Yeah.
single spike.
They're like half
That-
dog, half
That's
people.
really creepy.
Like,
And also something actually that I learned at Dragonsteel during spoiler Q&A was someone asked about how is hemalurgy actually tied directly to Ruin's investiture? And the answer is no. Someone could technically, again, he didn't mention this, but we know the chances are near infinitely small, but still there, that someone could, separate from Ruin, use hemalurgy and spike them in that aspect. So that's part of like this aspect with Paon and like Grell and all this stuff is you actually don't have to have Ruin's investiture
Yeah.
in order to spike. So it's actually because it's not actually tied. So people could technically, if it happens to spike in the same way, and then it, likely intention has to be involved in some fashion, but without like that same investiture could spike someone and create transfer that spike and transfer their spirit web to someone else.
Yeah. So
without the guidance of Ruin or any shard.
So theoretically, someone on Nalthis could discover hemalurgy.
Start spiking people. Could discover hemalurgy and start spiking people.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be a
With the
cool
right
one-off
intent.
book.
Yes.
Like just this guy, serial killer, just spiking people randomly on another world, but we know what it means.
We know what it means, but no one else knows, and we're all like, it's someone from Scadrial, and it turns out the surprise is, no, it's not.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Imagine if you were spiked with
anyway,
like
I just thought
a
I'd mention that.
gem heart spike.
It does have to be metal.
Yeah.
Well,
the spike
dang.
has to be metal, but actually someone can. So a gem heart can actually be used. You can actually you know how they what's the word? They take in a spren into their gem heart, and they like transform. They can actually do that with a hemalurgic spike. The spike is, but then it becomes the spren. Yeah. Like they have no spren, they just have a spike in their gem heart.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
And they transform using the spike.
Moving on, unless somebody else has some final things about hemalurgy.
Hemalurgy is just one of the most interesting things in the Cosmere.
So interesting, and this is also something from the spoiler Q&A that someone asked about, was that if someone were to spike an aviary and put it in themselves, that they could trick that world into thinking that they themselves were that bird, so that they would have those powers. Yeah, I know.
It's because you're taking the spirit web of an AVR.
Yeah.
That implies that you could take the spirit. You could do the same thing with like a Roshadium. I don't know why you'd want to, but
oh my gosh,
you could technically do it with an Elantrian.
If you did that, wouldn't you want to start like flapping your wings and flying around?
Leave.
Because you'd be like bonding yourself to that.
You gotta pretend to be a bird the whole time.
Yeah.
You might grow feathers out your nose.
I think that'd be a side effect, yeah. You'd be like chirping.
Feathers instead of fur.
Let's see. Speaking of healer creatures, we've got Kandra. Do we think that Orseer knew what Kelsey was trying to do?
Yes.
Yeah. He says that he does.
I meant kill the Lord Ruler.
Yeah.
Like
they talk about it in Hero of Ages. He's like, you signed a contract to the man who slaughtered who killed the Lord Ruler. Well, we didn't think he would actually succeed. Like we knew, but we didn't actually think he would succeed. Like, I mean, come on, it's the father.
We didn't actually think he'd succeed.
So new. He knew his plan. Like that was like his contract from the beginning was to do this. Yeah. So.
Well, and technically he didn't. Vin did.
True, but
yeah, irrelevant.
But it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that they would like I don't know. I could see it either way as them being so overly proud, like, oh, Rashek, he could survive anything, versus maybe we shouldn't tempt fate.
Well, but at the same time, like they've
They
probably
didn't care.
done this. They've probably done this before.
Yeah. Right?
Ooh.
They imply that potentially there are other people that have tried to use them to like
That's kind of
fight
interesting.
back.
Yeah.
Like, what
So
if
it's
somebody
like,
just hired one to go eat the Lord Ruler?
I was just thinking that.
Well,
Like,
they
what
can't
if
kill.
Well, they
Kandra got
can't.
the bands of mourning?
Are those aren't the bands
mean,
that he's wearing in like
except for
the
they're
final
not the bands of
confrontation,
mourning.
right?
So they actually, if you realize bands of mourning doesn't come from the Lord Ruler.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain
Yeah,
bounces
for the
along
future.
sometimes.
Yeah, no, we were good.
Yeah.
It took me a while to realize those weren't the bands.
That's
I always thought that.
me
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Like listening through it again, you actually realize it says they go find the bands that Vin pushes out of the window, and then they just like, oh yeah, those were actually just like ATM bands. It was
Yeah,
just
so they
ATM,
grind
we
them up
just
for the
pulled it apart
ATM.
and they grind them up and sell it off.
But I love the kind of Excalibur, Holy Grail-esque legends of them. I love that,
Right.
especially because it's something we have seen. The treasury being ATM-less, that was interesting.
Oh yeah.
Especially considering that the Lord Ruler would need ATM to keep his youth.
Right.
Yeah,
So
but
and he
how
probably
much
just keeps
would
his
we
own
really
supply.
Yeah. He can just go to Kandra homeland at any point in time and get more.
The Lord Ruler just
Like-
disappears for a few nights.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, if he's compounding steel,
Steel running all the way over there, like having a poker match with some of the first generation.
Oh my god.
he'll be gone and back in, in an hour.
Yikes.
Less.
See
Yeah.
Rashik fly.
It depends on how much he wants, how long it takes him to beat them at poker. But
But that's about it for that section.
I think
We've got Vin. She fixed her earrings and doesn't know why she kept it. That's Ruin's influence right there.
yeah, straight up.
Yep.
I mean, we
Uh,
straight up later on we have Ruin whisper in her ear.
yeah, because
To go back.
he's like, wait, what? I didn't think they would win.
No, this was his plan. This was Ruin's plan all along.
Well, it was probably like one of hundreds, if not thousands, of plans. But like, who would have thought the scraggly crew would have actually killed the Lord Ruler? I'm willing to bet it was probably set up to a different plan. But now that they did it, he's like, well, this girl has a hemalurgic spike.
Well,
I can just do this for the rest of the day.
Vin ingested some mist when she was a kid, and part of the reason why he spiked her was because he knew that she was going to be the one to become the next preservation. So he spiked her to prevent that from happening.
I thought he didn't. I thought I had heard that he didn't know that she was the one who preservation had planned originally. Like he didn't know that
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I think now he might.
discovered after he spiked her already and put her in motion as like his like pawn for that stuff.
I think now he might, but it's just like him telling her. Like, I don't know. It's just, it feels like there are so many plans, and for him to put all of his chips into this Hail Mary, like, kind of feels like that's not something Ruin would risk. But now that it worked, like, yeah, he's gonna just focus on this.
I think all of Ruin's plans were Hail Marys at this point in time. Like, he's just like, he's putting some fishing lines in and seeing which one hooks the fish. Like,
I kind of feel like that's sort of the case but he wasn't looking for a solution with those. He was looking for a faster way because he was already killing Laris, right? Like we know that we kind of understand that during Well of Ascension, right? We
Mhm.
see him slowly kind of fading and weakening until that very last moment, and then that's when Vin picks up the power. So
Right, but at the same time, he
I
was able to orchestrate the downfall of the Lord Ruler within 2 years of like the power coming back. So he definitely, like, maybe Kelsier wasn't his only plan, but he definitely had his workings going, and he found a way to time it really, really well.
Like I don't think
right.
I think he really had to just worry about the Lord Ruler because the Lord Ruler knew to just use the power again and again, and that would basically stop him for at least another 2,000 years. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's also aided by the fact that, and this is kind of my theory, I could be wrong. As the well fills up more and more, that's more and more of Laris's power funneling into that well, right? So his other manifestations would become weaker by contrast, and so therefore easier for ruin to influence, kill, damage, whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's move along to the final bit and try to speed run through all of this. We were already kind of talking about anything else from Kay's section.
We talked about ruins, talking to her.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there was something I wanted to bring up, but I can't remember anymore.
You guys think they're gonna get married?
I called dibs on that chapter.
Yeah,
Which
of course
chap?
you do.
No, of course.
I think we should be fair and let Reader have at least one.
No, I'm taking the chapter where she does.
Chapters.
I'm taking the chapter where she Duralumin soothes Straff. That's his name.
Sure.
Yeah. We all get one dibs per book. You can have dibs on the wedding, dibs on Duralumin. I'm guessing John want dibs on humans first chapter.
Human.
Yeah.
I want like a cool fight scene.
There you go.
Swiggity can have. We'll see as the book goes on.
Yeah, their relationship's just sweet. So that's it for that. There's nothing really foreshadowy. Like you can kind of see that it's hopefully going to turn out well. Elend's king now, and he could finally actually put all his ideas into practice.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things. My brother hates that Elend became king. Like he did nothing really in this book to deserve it.
No, that's not
You're
true.
right.
Stick around when everybody else left.
He united
he was
the
in the
noble
right
houses.
place at the right time.
He believed in the Ska.
Yep.
And he was able to. He had the vision, and this is in a sense it shows that he had the vision and the fearlessness to get in front of thousands of angry mobbing, butchering Ska who are literally just like murdering everyone and say, hold up.
He was the only possible candidate too. I mean, the nobles would not have allowed a Ska king at that time, and he was the only one who would have treated the Ska as equals. He was the only candidate.
He's also the only noble who has any sort of connection to Kelsier whatsoever.
Right.
And therefore ties to the survivor, who is the new.
Well, and Breeze helped calm down. Like Breeze got behind him pretty quickly, right? Like in his speech.
Plus,
Breeze
he's
is
like
calming down the couch, so it's like
he's a prominent, well-known figure in their society too. Like, it kind of makes sense that the heir to this big noble house, who's used to dealing with the noble houses are used to ruling. It makes sense that they would kind of go along with that.
Yeah, my brother just does not like it. He thinks he just gets it because he needs to. He's the only choice, but he shouldn't be. Like Doxson honestly could have been king, but then you run into they would not have allowed a Ska to become king.
Yeah, the noble house in Vidal would have.
Yeah.
Would have to the new government.
Mm-hmm.
Technically,
It needed
Grease
to
is a
be a-
nobleman, and he was supposed to be the politician.
Yeah, but there's a difference in politician and ruler.
Is there?
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of the HMFIC of politicians. Don't ask.
Because Breeze never wants to be in charge of people. He
No.
doesn't want to be in charge of people.
He doesn't want to
That's
be on the stage.
part of why he works with the Scott crew.
Yeah. He doesn't want to be in the
But
limelight.
if he did want to out himself as a noble, he could be King Ladrian the First.
But Elend was always planning on getting
That's
power
first.
eventually, and always planning on using it for doing good to help out the Ska.
But now he gets to. Yay.
Not this much power.
Okay, any final comments? We're running a bit late. I did not expect us to cover this much in this small of a section. I take silence as a no.
Cricket. Cricket.
Okay, well, if you stuck around for the spoiler section, thank you so much for listening. We are excited to continue with Mistborn, The Well of Ascension. That'll be our next episode, just the prologue per usual. And always remember, there's always another connection. Have a nice night.
Oh, I see the shiny new one right there.
Yeah.
Front and center.
Don't even, if I hear a single peep about it, I will make a new server and not invite you.
Prominently displayed.
Except for Swiggity, we need him to do all the work.
I haven't started mine. I haven't even bought it yet, so you're relatively safe.
I have read the whole thing.
Shut up. Shut up.
I
Shut
would
up.
never
Nice.
Shut
ever
up.
spoil anything for any of you, but so
What if I ask
Yeah.
nicely?
Shut up.
then I'd stop you.
Curses!
I might start reading it today. I do have the European version, and apparently my special copy for pre-order is on its way. Who knows
I
where?
would really like to see the European version. I bet that's cool.
Ah,
Oh, it's so sweet.
unopened. I almost had to fight the lady who was working at the bookstore because they had it. Because I went into the bookstore, I went to where I knew Brandon Sanderson stuff was, and it wasn't there. I'm like, hey, is this all the stuff you have? And she's like, yeah, everything we have is out. I'm like, oh, I thought, do you guys not have the Lost Mountain? She's like, is that new Brandon Sanderson book? And then she goes into the back room out. I'm like, okay, so that was a lie. She's like, and I'm
That's
like, yeah.
awesome.
And she's like, well, we'll put it out tomorrow. I'm like, why tomorrow? And this was Wednesday, I believe. And she's like, well, that's when it comes out. And I'm like, no, it came out yesterday.
Yeah.
She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yes. Don't test me on this. I'm positive. I even know at DragonCon they had the reveal party for it. She's like, well, I gotta go make sure. She pulls out her phone because apparently there's a £20,000 fine if you give a book early.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And so after she checked for a bit, she's like, oh, I guess you're right. And she gave me it. I'm like, I wonder how many other Cosmere fans have come into the store